Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of our Game Maker series of the pre-order bonus. I'm your host, one of your hosts, Cameron Warren, and I'm joined by Jacob Price. And today we have our very special guest, Joe Winter. From Joe, tell us your studio name. I already forgot it.
That's right. The name changed, so it's been Escape, but I have to change it, so it's going to be Resting Relic going forward.
Resting Relic. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'll add to the confusion. But yeah, Resting Relic. Just think of the Master Sword in the forest, and that's
there you go.
That's
there we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Beautiful. Yeah, in my notes I have Studio Escape, so I was wrong anyway.
Yeah, we would have said Studio Escape, but well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. You are the third developer to come on our show. We're super excited to have you. You are currently working on Song of Iron. I said that right? Correct?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Which I think premiered. I don't know when it premiered, but I saw it at ID at Xbox Showcase, Jake, I think, and we were like floored by it, and we said we got to get that guy on the show, solo dev. So, Joe, let's just jump right in. First question we usually like to ask is, tell us about your journey in game development, like from how did you get interested in developing games and creating games, all the way to kind of where you're at now with developing Song of Iron.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in the industry for almost 15 years now as an animator. I started by going to an art institute for game design, which really was kind of like anything game related a little bit, but nothing very good. And I was lucky enough to find some good friends, and we kind of got competitive, in a good way, which really pushed us to be better. I mean, we kind of joked about giving ourselves like 3 assignments for every assignment that the school gave us, because that was like we realized fast that we had to do it ourselves. But college. From there, I got a job at a place called Play Mechanics. They do Big Buck Hunter, the arcade game.
Okay.
If you're familiar with it. Terminator Salvation's arcade game.
Yep.
Worked on those 2 games.
Wow.
We're like Big Buck Hunter HD, just a little bit. And then Terminator Salvation. I was there for just a little bit. It was kind of like a total a jump board for me. And then I got into Cryptic Studios, which is out in California. So I moved there. And that must have been like 2008 or something.
Okay.
And I worked there for like 7 years. I worked on Champions Online, Neverwinter Online, a little bit of Star Trek Online. Neverwinter, I did pretty much the full project as the lead animator for it.
Wow.
Which was crazy. At the time, I was like, this is like 10% of my entire life. Awesome. It was like 4+ years on it. And then I moved up to Washington to work on Halo 5. I was a contractor for, I think, like 6 months before they hired me on. They moved me up pretty quick, which was really exciting. Nice. I was really lucky. I had some friends up there. So, I was just asking for some feedback on my reel because I was getting ready, and they were like, how about you do a test, because my boss just saw this and he's interested. And it was just this like total whirlwind. And then like a couple weeks later, I was up working on Halo, which was at that point, I finally kind of hit some really big studio, which was really exciting. And I worked there all the way until this December. At the very end of the year, I left to Song of Iron. Had been, picking up steam and doing well enough, and I was feeling confident with like wish list numbers and just general response that I was like, okay, now I feel like I owe it to people to spend the full time on it, and so I left the 343 and
so you were working on Song of Iron while you were contracting at 343 then.
Yeah, I was. I only contracted for like 6 months, so I was full time for the last 5.5 years or so. I've been I was lead animator for Infinite for the character team, which is like all the enemies.
Okay.
Until I left, and then and then it's been Song of Iron. But Song of Iron's been going for pretty much 2 years now. There was a couple lulls in the beginning, and kind of like it's tough with the double job, but.
Are you happy you made the switch to independent solo dev, or are you missing the formal structure of the big game studio?
That's got to be quite the leap. Yeah. I mean, just 343 Industries, everybody knows who that is. Everybody knows what project they're working on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the COVID's obviously kind of like changed that like it would have been way crazier had I been just left the office directly.
Right.
But since I'd been working from home for 8 months or something, like it basically just felt like I still feel like it's the weekend or something, and it's been 4 months now. But yeah, it's crazy. It's so much different. I miss my friends the most. Like, but even then, we're all out of the office, so like Beer Fridays isn't happening anyway. So once I start seeing them out and doing that again, then I'm gonna feel that pretty good. But for the moment, I love it, and we'll really know after we launch to see if I made a good decision or not. But I'm having a blast. So.
Man, that's exciting. I mean, just thinking about this most recent timeline, right? I mean, COVID's been hectic for everybody. I think Cameron and I, we first saw Song of Iron when it premiered in the summer. So summer 2020, that was its big premiere with the Xbox Showcase. And so since that moment in the summer through December, what was happening? I mean, you mentioned this briefly. You saw positive feedback, wishlist numbers. I've read millions of threads about how wishlisting is incredibly important. So I feel like every like Friday, whenever I see the hashtag, I'm like, okay, I need a wish list like 9 things right now. But yet that timeline in particular, how was that?
Yeah, honestly, it's been a crazy ride, and like I have to, like, I don't know, pinch myself is maybe cliche, but it's just like kind of like pay attention to the momentum, because it's so easy to be self-critical and just sort of be here with myself and like forget that people are excited, or that I've got all this support or whatever. But it was like in February I had a Reddit post do really, really well, and that's how Xbox found me. I mean, I think it was front page. It did like 125,000 upvotes, kind of thing. Like one of those. I think gaming gets like one indie game a week that just like blows up, and it's awesome. And I've been super lucky that I've actually had that happen twice with Song, and that like instant flood of attention and mostly positive stuff. And Xbox found me. And so I made a deal with them through the ID program just to come to them. It was only going to be Steam before that. And then this was like, hey, please come here. We'll help you out with this sort of stuff. And it's like, yeah, sounds great. I mean, and they're not my publisher, so I'm still completely independent. Wow. It just like, it's the ID of the Xbox program. It sounds like I'm just like shilling for them or something, but it's seriously been, I don't know a better way to do it. They're trying to help. They've got 2,000 some games they published already. Like they're dumping games into Xbox, and then I think some they help out a little more. I think I'm one of the lucky ones, and like it's awesome. It's all help, and it's like no gain to them as far as like they're not taking anything from me.
Wow.
So I mean, like they'll get their percentage that they get for every game sold, but that's it. That's the only thing, and so it's an amazing program. And so lucky enough, I found that. Yeah, I was like, I had like 10 seconds in the pre-show of the digital E3 show. And I was like, that's when some people started like noticing, like in the Xbox community. And then I had a demo for the Game Awards show. Jeff Keighley like tweeted like, hey, what are indie games I should check out? And like one person was just like Song of Iron. And then then he followed me, and then I messaged him, and then he was like, can you have a demo ready? And I was like, yes. And then I ran to my computer. I was like, oh God, what have I done? And that was a mad dash to get that together, but that was awesome. I mean, it was so crazy, and got that on Xbox, and that was in December, and that was sort of like the final, like, yeah, this is like, this definitely is like, I think people really liked it, and I had a ton to do, and the amount of downloads I had, I was really happy with, and all that kind of stuff. And you go, I don't know how many people are going to buy it versus download a free demo, but like those numbers are great. I'll take those on launch day. So like, yeah, so super happy about it.
What a crazy story, man. That is so cool. That's so cool. And I didn't know that about ID at Xbox. That's an incredible program. We love indie games on the podcast. Jake is the indie game mastermind. He knows like everything coming out. I'll tell you, for one, I mean, of all those games that were shown at the Game Awards and ID at Xbox, I mean, Song of Iron immediately popped, and what popped was like the combat animation, especially. It was like, whoa, this is like, this looks like real. Like it looks real, and like the uniqueness of the you know, the what is it called? What is it called? Side to side. I'm losing my
Side
mind.
scroller.
I just had my second COVID vaccine today, so I'm
fun.
hanging
Yeah,
on.
see?
Side scroller 3D,
Yeah.
but like with the it was
that's
just a
2.5D.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just such a unique style. Tell us about like how you came to do that style and to do something like that unique, and then kind of how your process of developing like the combat animations, because I've never seen anything like it. Like it looks incredible.
Mhm.
So, well, I appreciate that very much. Animations definitely it better look good. I feel pretty bad if that's where I need to be able to stand out a bit. But as far as the art goes, I pretty much just wanted to not obey the rules of the side scroller, but just happen to be in a side scroller. And so those
Oh,
levels are all just built as if they were full normal like 3D over the shoulder game for the most part. But I just happened to stick you to the plane. And so what that's done is created like such a great natural foreground background.
yes.
We're so used, we've seen it before with all the parallax, but because it's an actual built out thing, it's like perfect parallax, and it's infinite. Also, it's not just like 10 sheets or or 5 sheets or 1 sheet or something that's moving in the background. And then because it's lit globally by like a day night cycle sun, it doesn't really transition that much, but that's the system type that all of that lighting looks super great in the scene because it's all true depth and all that stuff. And I really think it's like a really simple concept, but it just like people don't do it that much, I guess. And so it's maybe standing out a decent amount for that. I mean, Inside, which is a huge inspiration from a game, works a lot like that.
That's true. That's a good point.
Limbo kinda. There was a little bit more 2D-ish, but it was sort of same thing. And then Little Nightmares 2 just came out, and they kind of have like a very similar thing. And it's awesome. I mean, I think it looks really cool. And then I love grounded realism in games. Like I think reality is like really interesting when it's in certain situations. Like I was a huge DayZ fan. If you guys know that one, like it's like classic, and they ruined the standalone and all that stuff. I'm like a mod for life. But like that game was like blew my mind. It was just like, you mean I have to walk all the way over there to do anything? It's like, yeah, but that like added suspense, and it did all this like really cool stuff, and that sort of started me in love with that as just a concept. And while this isn't a game like DayZ in that way, but there's just a mentality of building an environment that's as realistic as possible and that actually feels really good for some reason. And people like understand it better too, so they believe it, and then they fall right into it, and then you're in theory you're totally into it. But
yeah, so you, just so I'm clear on this, so you're actually designing, I mean, like a full 3D space, but then you're just like locking the camera in. Is that what I'm hearing?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, like I'm using Unreal, and there's literally a checkbox that says like constrained to plane, and so it's just like all you can do is move on Y, right, which is the left to right motion. I mean, it gets a little more complicated, but that's effectively what it is, and it's just otherwise it's just a normal map. I could disable that and change the camera and just run all over the place. But
lock to Y, nice.
So
yeah,
go ahead, Jake.
yeah. It's interesting that you bring this up, because I was going to ask you about that, because I actually thought of Ori and the Will of the Wisps in particular, and I remember reading an article where they were describing how they were creating all those different sheets, and how they were getting a lot of fluidity between what's happening in the background and how that's coming to the foreground and characters emerging. So it's fascinating to hear that you're actually not doing that. You just have a 3D space.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, there's like, it's a mix of like laziness too. It's like, how do I get guys to come from the background? It's just like, just make it a normal game, and then they can just run over there, and then and it sounds so silly, like that it's done, but it stands out to people, which is exciting, and so yeah, it's cool.
Tell us about the combat, like in terms of the mechanics. Like, what should we expect in terms of like, should we be so? Jake has become now a Dark Souls shill, so every time, anytime you talk about combat, we have to bring it up. Like, what should we be expecting in terms of? I mean, it looks super gritty, super realistic. I mean, should we expect like a bone crushing experience? Is it more arcadey? Like,
yeah, sure. It's it's actually more arcadey than it looks, I think. But I people who played the demo were surprised at the difficulty and the need to pay attention and stuff. So
Mhm.
it's stuff I've gotten so good because I've played, however many hundreds of hours of it during
Right.
just development
Right.
that like I thought people were gonna blow through the demo and people were like, "Geez, this is so hard," but they like in a good way. And I was like, "Man, I need like more people to test this," because like some people were like, "I can't kill a troll," and I can't not get hit. I can't like not get hit by him or something. It's like
Right. Yeah.
I've gotten so used to all the patterns
Right.
and stuff. But I think there's a really easy way to make it through the whole game without getting too hurt or dying very much. But I
Mhm.
really the combat, I've tried to make something that will encourage you to have fun, and then through that you'll create a little bit of your own difficulty. And that's kind of like my design philosophy too, is like this should be a fun experience. And how I'm doing that is, I just give you a bunch of really contextual things to do. And I think sort of naturally you start trying to do the more interesting ones because those work and they're not that hard, but they kind of can put you into tougher situations. So like, throwing the axe is a great example, which
Okay.
shows up in almost every video.
Yeah.
It's if it hits them in the head, it's like an instant kill on almost everybody, but now you don't have an axe. And so then you have to run around and grab another one really quick and then start swinging and blocking again. But
Mhm.
then it's just like throw the axe again because it's such an easy kill. But again, then you don't have an axe. And so it's sort of like it really encourages like style, like
Yeah, I know
you're not
exactly what
like
you're
getting
talking about, yeah.
scored, but it's like just like have fun playing it. Like, throw the axe, headshot with an arrow, run up and drop kick the third guy. I mean, and it's just like, and you're there and you should be having fun. I describe it a lot like an old Western brawl in a bar or something. It's just like take a bottle, break it over someone's head, grab a chair, throw it across the room, kick the next guy over, and then just grab whatever's closest and just keep going. And it all just sort of works and it's fairly successful. You can get overwhelmed a little bit and you can dive and dodge and evade backwards and stuff. But it's really just meant to encourage you to just sort of play and have fun.
That's very
And some
cool,
of them
man.
are tough, but yeah, it's just like that thing where I've always felt like, you see a cool trailer and then a gameplay's nothing like it. And I just sort of
Right.
wanted you to do like, to be able to do what you expected to be able to do. Some other stuff, which is really simple, but like the drop kick, I basically started with just needing like a shove. So I did a kick,
Yeah.
kind of like a
Okay.
Spartan kick.
Yeah.
And then I was jumping and doing it. And then he was playing the like standing animation in the air. I was like, well, I should do an air version. And so that just sort of naturally turned into, if you're in the air and you do something, you do the air version of it. If you're on the ground, you do something, you do the ground version. And it's all just really contextual. And so I think it all just sort of feels natural in the end. And
Wow.
to go back to the kind of like I like realism thing, it really kind of works well with that.
Yeah.
I love the style philosophy. Like you can play the game without looking cool, but if you want to like make your own difficulty and do like cool stuff, you can totally do that. I love that. That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, yeah, people will sort of like play to that sometimes, and sometimes people will just be like, all I did was shoot everybody in the head with an arrow. And I was like, did you have fun doing that? Because that sounds great.
So what would be like the biggest like accomplishment, keeping in mind that type of sort of stylized combat? Because I'm thinking of, man, you go on Twitter and you see somebody post like just a gnarly clip of them in Katana Zero or even Ghost of Tsushima, where they have all of these abilities at their disposal, and I'm thinking Katana Zero more, where it's like, man, look at how they took out this room, right? But Katana Zero is like very puzzle based in terms of how the rooms are, and it sounds like, and so I'd like you to talk maybe a little bit more about this, that this is all about, hey, this is a sandbox of mechanics, here's a context, go for it. So would you say it's more like the latter?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter. I mean, it's the sandbox isn't massive, but it is there. Like like with a Halo game or something, another like very sandboxy different genre, but it's on my mind because I've been there. I mean, you could use the AR for the whole game, right? I mean, you could make your way through with the AR. But Halo, similarly, it's just like use the guns, like spend them and then grab the next one and do it and jump around. And it's probably stupid, but it's like, it makes it more interesting. I think, clips, I've got some, I post on Twitter like once a week for the most part. I think that the gifs that I hope I see people posting of like their cool takedowns is, and I've got a few where it's like you kill a guy with the axe, you turn around and throw it at the guy coming behind you, and you pull the bow out back the other way, and you like headshot a guy, and it's this very like 10-second John Wick moment.
Right.
Yeah,
And then
okay.
but then they all, because they have this slow ragdoll, they all kind of do that like roll, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And then it's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
and then no one's standing and you're just there and you just like pick up another axe and then walk on. And
That's awesome.
it's just like such a cool kind of badass moment.
Yeah, and the
and I was like,
animations, I think it, like when you're talking about, I'm like thinking very specifically of some clips I've seen of Song of Iron. So it's cool to know. And now that you say it, it almost seems obvious that your background's in animation because of how stylized everything looks when you're doing things. But of course, animation is just one part of this. And although animation has been a huge part of your career and it's, you know, really strong part of Song of Iron, how have you been able to start incorporating these other aspects? I mean, now you're doing narrative. Now, you know, we have our list here in the podcast. We analyze games, talk about narrative, mechanics, gameplay loop, and impact on the industry. So how do you take into these other fields where normally you'd have other teams working on them, and how are you doing that yourself?
Yeah, I don't know how I'm doing it myself. It's sort of a chaos storm, I think, at the moment. But
yeah,
you know, I think my time in the industry in general has helped a lot. You know, working on a ton of games of multiple genres, you sort of, it's inevitable that you sort of reach out or have ideas and go talk to people in those other departments, so on. I've played games forever now, and like, you know, it's always spinning in your head. You know, I'm sure every department kind of thinks this, but animators, we're kind of storytellers. We're also action people. We're, you know, we kind of glue a lot of the final product together, because depending on the game, without it, you know, you sort of miss out on a lot of stuff.
Right.
And I think it's helped me a ton. You know, I'm always interested in like, why is the character behaving this way, so that I can animate him appropriately and I give him the right personality. But also, while I'm giving personality, I'm also trying to display to the player how powerful they are, or how powerful this character is, or both, because of how the guy reacts, but then how he attacks. Like it gets it's this very big web of stuff, right? And I've just poured that as a concept kind of into the whole thing, which is why the game's not super hard on purpose, if some people run into it, but it's just about like looking cool and like having an experience. That's kind of how I like to sell it in a lot of ways too. And I try to be like a little cinematic, and that kind of comes from the animation background with cameras and a little bit of this and that. And it just sort of all folds together. And, you know, I've got weaknesses for sure. I am using, I'm getting some help on audio. I have a composer, Will Ghost, who's writing a full soundtrack for me, which is super exciting.
Very nice. Yeah.
And it was like that most recent trailer was one of his, and the first trailer was his like, hey, I'd love to work on this. Here's a test. And I was like, let's use that in the trailer I'm about to release. Awesome. That would be great. Like, let's do it. So that was awesome. And then Strikecast Audio, which is doing sound effects and stuff. And like, that's a weakness that I can't overcome by sheer will, like I can with some other stuff.
I mean,
so.
you're doing so much, Joe. I'm already impressed. It's so impressive. It's so cool to talk to you guys. Like, I'm just super impressed. Like the vast array of like things that you have to know how to do to execute on a game, especially a game like this, like, is just incredible. On that note, tell us about your decisions around like the art direction, the style, the setting. I mean, this is definitely.
Sure.
I mean, clarify me if I'm wrong. This looks like a Viking game, and it's got this awesome aesthetic to it. Jake and I were actually just talking about the other day. I was like, man, the Viking setting is so popular, and just like so many people use it. And it's like, I mean, I'm never upset. Like, it's a very cool setting. I just tell us about your decisions around that, and like how you came to that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it is Viking for the most part. You know, I kept battling between like pseudo Viking and like calling him like Hundin instead of Odin, or something, like, and like kind of like almost the names. Yeah. But based on the length of the game and stuff, I'm just, this is Odin or whatever. Whoever you run into. So it's, as far as that's concerned, it's a Viking game. It came from a D&D campaign that I was playing with some of my buddies.
Nice.
He, you know, I usually run them, but I was like, I got to play one. And then I had this character. I gave him this way too big of a backstory kind of thing. And then he just went with it. And like a huge part of the campaign was like going through my story.
Really?
And yeah, and pretty quickly, you know, as I was like doing some axe animations, I was like, well, this is sort of already a Viking game. And then I was like, I'm just going to do that campaign. Like that story that we went on was like really cool. Unexpected stuff happened. And I just think it's surprisingly unique, which is I think is pretty hard to do. And maybe people will play it and say, yeah, I mean, whatever, we've seen this 1,000 times, but I don't think so. So we'll see.
How long is the game? If you don't, do you mind revealing it? You don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important to be open about it. Actually, it's a shorter game. I'm looking at that 2 to 3 hour mark, kind of like
nice.
Inside does or Journey, you know.
I love that, man. 2 to 3 hour game. That is music to my ears.
Yeah, it's sort of like I'm hoping to like rise to the top of the backlogs and just get this is easy and just like right on through.
Yes.
That is exactly what I
strategy.
just this week with my backlog. I had like 3 indie games. I was like, you know what? These are all like 4 hours. I'm just gonna knock them out. So yeah, you got people like me.
Yeah, I it's if there's intention for 3 games, like a whole trilogy, and all together it'll be like a full-on AAA 8-hour plus, campaign. But that's a long way away. That's. I mean, if everything goes well, I think the story has a lot to it, and
well, it certainly seems poised to. I mean, it's got everything I think to make for a heck of an experience. I'm incredibly excited for it. Super excited for it.
Yeah, I'm also super excited for it. The narrative obviously don't reveal a whole lot on that right now, because what really drew Cameron and I in was seeing these animations, the combat, the setting. I mean, it just looked really cool. And in terms of narrative, not much has been released on a big scale that I'm aware of. So I'm excited to see. You're saying the story is pretty good, which I believe you, but I think that's really interesting because if you can get that perfect cocktail, right, of all of those things, it's got to be tough, right? So I don't know. I'm excited for that.
You're doing all the writing, right, Joe? Like all the
again, that's probably like my second weakness. So I've kept it really. There's very little writing. I'm under like 1,000 words. Like it's very quick.
Wow, okay.
You only talk to a few people. They kind of just like, here's a little bit of information. Continue. But what I'm trying to tell, a lot of the story is in the environment. I mean, we've seen a little bit of it, like in that most recent trailer. He's like holding someone, like, and there's fire everywhere and stuff. And there's a little dialogue in that, but like, you get what you need for the most part from those moments, and then from the environment you see in the background, what you're running into. I think that's a Journey, Inside, Shadow of the Colossus also as like the 3 that I think of all the time that are like little to no dialogue, amazing stories. And you go, well, how the heck does that work? You go, well, they did it all somewhere else.
Yeah, and Inside is a great example for sure.
Inside is really, really good. And Journey too, right? I mean, like the most story you get is those little kind of like animated walls, like as you load levels, but you can just tell what's going on the whole time, and it's like so engaging. And so I couldn't quite get away with no dialogue, but I just got a little bit in there, and which I'm happy about so far. And it's getting more refined and less amateur sounding as I fine tune my way through it. But
you're doing so much, man. That's so hard.
Yeah,
writing's hard enough by itself. Good grief.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
That's a lot of hats to wear for sure. I think that sounds really great. I mean, and you're totally right. Sometimes it doesn't really matter that there's a ton of dialogue options, right? Not every game needs to be Mass Effect, right?
Totally.
I love really good environmental storytelling. I love being able to see what's happening and seeing the environment come alive really in those ways. So that gets me really excited for sure. There was a question in there, but now I'm just excited.
Joe is we've come up on our time limit here. I don't want to take too much of your time. What final things would you like to say about, your studio or Song of Iron or the game, or just anything else that you want to bring up?
I mean, for the most part, I just say thanks for having me. This is a really fun conversation. I don't get to talk about making the game very much. It's usually just sort of like what's going to be in it and stuff like that.
Right.
So this is great. I'd love to do it again sometime. I mean, honestly, the game it's my first indie game, but it's not my first game. I'm just really excited to like get this out there. It's been such a like a roller coaster, and it's gotten bigger than I would have ever imagined. And I just hope that it lives up to this kind of like crazy momentum that it has. I feel like people will like it. I'm really excited to get it in people's hands pretty soon. Announcement of launch day comes soonish. Kind of, I want to be 100%. The last thing I want to do is announce it and go, well, it's actually 3 days later
Right.
because my hard drive fried. I don't know.
This year, right? Though 2021,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm targeting summer right now.
Okay.
So pretty, I mean, really not that far away.
Yeah.
And now it's just sort of like make sure all the bows are tied, and it launches on all the platforms and all the this and that's done. And yeah. But I wish list, like you guys said at the beginning, it is very important. It really like likes on a YouTube video or whatever. It helps so much. And yeah, follow me on Twitter, 'cause that's where I post a lot of gifts pretty much every week. Something
What's your
new.
Twitter handle, Joe? Where's the best place for people to find? Do you have a YouTube channel as well?
I have a YouTube channel as well. Pretty much if you search Song of Iron at any of those places, you're going to find it. And also songofiron.com has a link to all of those things.
Perfect.
So you can route yourself through there if you want. But
Well, Joe, thank you so much. What a fascinating conversation. Song of Iron, it's coming really soon. Jake and I are really excited about this. I think everyone who listens to the podcast, if you haven't seen this game in action, please go check it out. It looks phenomenal. It looks incredible. It looks like nothing I've ever seen in terms of animation and combat, and we are really excited to get it in our hands. Joe, we'll do a whole episode about it when it comes out. We're going to talk thoroughly. We're going to do our analysis about it. We're super excited. Well, this has been another episode of our Game Maker series. We are so grateful for everyone who listens, and especially for Joe for coming on the show. Follow us at PreorderCast on Twitter. You can follow me at Mass Generic and Jake at Jacob_Chiptip18. Subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps. And we'll be posting more about this on Twitter. Joe, we'll tag you on that. Make sure your followers know about this interview. It was awesome. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.